Good afternoon, everyone. I think we're going to start in just 1 minute. Let us just go live on YouTube and then we can start. All right, so we are live on YouTube. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Victoria Nalole, and in today's webinar, it's more of a conference. It's our mentorship conference organized by the African Energy and Minerals Management Initiative. AEMI is a charity organization that was founded by me in 2017 with a group of young professionals, young experts who have dedicated most of their time in taking part and developing different AEMI projects, including this particular project, which is focused on women, on AEMI mentorship, where we mentor young professionals from different countries. So with the AEMI mentorship, what we do, we call upon people, young professionals, to register. And also we call upon experts who are interested in mentoring these young professionals to also register. And then we try to introduce them to their different mentors and mentees so that they can get some knowledge about the sector and also be inspired. So I'll just briefly talk about myself. I'm a lawyer by profession. I'm also the founder and executive director at AEMI, and I also run a consulting firm called Nalole Energy and Mining Consultancy, that is named Energy. But recently I was offered lectureship at the University of Bradford. So right now I'm based in the UK, in Bradford, where I lecture natural resources law and policy. First, I would like to thank our panelists because I know they are all very busy professionals, but I'd like to thank them for creating time to take part in this conference and also to share their experience. But besides that, they're also going to use the opportunity to comment on some of the key trends in the energy sector, including the current global energy crisis, the developments in different countries, and also what is happening generally. So I would also like to thank my colleagues from AEMI, including the organizing committee, which constituted myself, Ms. Jocelyn Omonti, Ms. Sarah Mokonde, and Basil. And we got a lot of support from Zach and also from Kennedy. So I would like to thank them for all their time, because I have to note all our activities at AEMI are not paid. It's a self-sponsored NGO. So whatever effort we put in, the conferences we're organizing, we're doing it free of charge. And that really shows the passion on our side and also the passion and dedication of our staff at AEMI, because you put in a lot of work, you're working, but remember, you're not really getting paid for this work. So I would like to thank my colleagues for all their work and dedication, because it really takes a lot of time to do these different activities. Besides the mentorship program, we also have a project focused on women empowerment, where we reach out to different women in the energy sector and also in the mining sector. We have previously offered support to these women, but also we have a project on health and protective gear, where we take different protective gears to the people who are involved in small-scale mining. When you look at our website, you will see some of the work we have been doing in those mining communities. And I repeat, again, this is all free of charge. So we work, we put in the expertise, but it's basically pro bono. But besides our work in these communities and besides empowering the youth, AEMI has also been an organization that has given different people opportunities to enhance their CVs, to get experience. But as young professionals, sometimes when you're applying for a job, you need some experience on your CV. So we pride in some of our professionals who have been successful, but they started their career in the energy and mining sector at our organization, and now they're really thriving. So we also pride in that, in not only mentoring the youth and reaching out to the local communities, but also being a source of experience to the different people who would practically find it hard to get a job unless if they have something on their CVs. So this conference, although it's focused on mentoring or giving advice to the youth, we also cannot underestimate the crucial role of the energy sector, especially right now or with this global energy crisis. We have seen that the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 7 has become a reality. It has become a springboard where all other goals really have to be based for them to be implemented. So goal 7 of the UN SDG is focused on energy access. And we note right now that many countries are not only focused on energy access, but also the issues of energy security. The global oil and gas prices are going high, the energy bills are high, and that brings in the affordability issues. And at the same time, we are faced with the dilemma of tackling energy security, but also being able to tackle climate change. That is the UN SDG 13. So how are we going to balance this with the global move to transition to a low carbon economy? So this conference has come at a time where we really need to address the global energy challenges we're experiencing. We need to be practical about the initiatives to transition to a low carbon economy and also issues of tackling climate change. Is it practical in this era? Do we have to revise some of the policies? Do we need to rethink some of the key issues concerning energy transitions and climate change? So our experts will briefly give their expert opinion on some of these key issues and also be able to address some of the questions which most youth are asking. How do you progress in the energy sector? How do you make it in this sector? Is it always something that is easy, or there people have experienced challenges? And if you experience challenges, how do you move forward? So it's always good to hear from the people who have made it, because all of us, I think most of us, I would say, we have hit a rock bottom at some point in our career life. Myself, I hit a rock bottom just a few months back where I wasn't sure what I wanted to do in the sector. But once you have people you're looking at, once you know that there are people who have made it in these sectors, then you get encouraged, you get inspired to not stay at the bottom, but to fight hard and be able to make it. So I'm very pleased with today's conference, because there are also different panelists whom I admire, who really inspire me a lot. So as much as this is for the mentees, but it's also for us to learn from their different experiences, so that we know that we have to push hard in the energy sector, but also in the mining sector, because I know you're now aware that critical minerals like cobalt are very key in this energy transition movement. So there's that, we can't deny that both the energy and mining sectors right now, they're driving our economies. So we need to know what is going on and also inspire the youth who would really want to push hard in these sectors to keep pushing. So with those remarks, I would like to invite my colleague Jocelyn Omondi to introduce our first panelists and also to move forward with this conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Victoria, for the wonderful introduction to AEMI, to our guest today. So my name is Jocelyn Omondi. I am the Assistant Executive Director at AEMI. I'm also a practicing advocate at GRO Advocate LLP in Nairobi, Kenya. So today's discussion, I'll call it a discussion more of a session, because it's going to be a very interactive session. And we're going to be talking about and reflecting on the global energy crisis and its impact on different countries. And we are so happy to hear from our speakers today. We have two panel sessions. The first one, I have just stated the theme, and then the second one is going to be introduced by my colleague, Mr. Zach. So without further ado, I would like to invite Professor Paul Griffin. So generally, we are going to invite you and hear your expert opinions on the theme of today's discussion, which is just reflecting on the global energy crisis and its impact on different countries. Then afterwards, I'm going to follow up with a mentorship question so that we can learn and hear more from you. So I'd just like to invite Professor Paul Griffin. He's a special advisor of oil and gas at White and Case in London, United Kingdom. He is also a lecturer at the University of Dundee. And thank you very much for honoring our invitation. You're welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to have the chance to participate in such a great conference, and also to work with Victoria and Jocelyn again, and to support the institution. My comments are through a lawyer's eyes. I practiced in international oil and gas for some 40 years before retiring from that, but I continue as an academic, as Jocelyn mentioned, and also as an arbitrator and an expert witness within the international oil and gas business. I did have to smile when it came to putting my notes together about the global energy crisis, because I'm sure when the words were written, it was one crisis. Now it's a different one. And I think that shift of circumstances is a really important element in what we are looking at. And it's these circumstances moving and the way in which the legal rights, the treaties, the agreements don't necessarily move as the circumstances swirl around them. So here, I think for me, what's really important is the elements of relationships, which are being tested very sorely in many ways, and also the politics as well. So energy is international, but energy isn't just one thing. Electricity tends to be regional at most. Oil and gas is necessarily global. Coal is maybe somewhere between the two. And whereas markets are shifting, the contracts and the treaties, the regulations are not moving. And I think you only have to look at the shift of oil and gas prices. And whereas oil is a global commodity, natural gas is not, although it's moving in that direction. To see the way in which the effects in one region or one place will play through to others. I think also is these sort of overview comments to start with. Energy transition is an expression which is much used, but which necessarily means very different things in different places. I'm sitting in London at the moment, and if you sit in London, you tend to think that the world will be entirely electron-based in very short time. And that's not really going to happen. If you look at other parts of the world, you'll see the energy transition is likely to mean reducing coal and using more gas. Similarly, having positive beneficial effects, but being very different in its way. So the international effect, I think, always being brought into account. I enjoyed Victoria's comments at the beginning, and I was struck by the mood before the COP26 conference and the mood that followed, where before the COP26 conference, emissions, reductions, targets becoming ever shorter, ever more fierce, and then a difference. A move towards a recognition of security of supply, price effects, how the cost will be met. And then I think even more recently, the effects in Russia and Ukraine, which you could look at being confined to Russia and Ukraine. But it hasn't really taken very long for those effects to spill out into other parts of the world. And now you see increased oil supplies into Europe, particularly from the Middle East. Increased natural gas this morning, the accord reached with the US and the European Union for increased LNG supplies into Europe, seeking to reduce the dependency on Russian gas. So elements in different parts of the world are unlikely to remain just in those parts of the world, particularly when you're looking at oil and gas and mining. And I think also just coming further on the shift in mood, I think, since COP26, a recognition that there are costs to be borne if the aspirations are to be met. And also that transition is an elastic word. A transition can be over a period of months, or it can be over a period of years. What is that period going to be, to me, is really uncertain. Just to close, I would also comment on the effects, most obviously in commercial terms, prices, security of supply, but also dispute resolution is shifting. You can't transition and change without provoking disputes because you're changing the circumstances. Dispute resolution, particularly in oil and gas, is shifting. Finance is very different now. There was a move which was away from the so-called fossil fuels, with a lot of lenders being unprepared to lend into particularly oil and gas and coal. Now you're beginning to see international oil companies which withdrew from those developments returning to them. Lenders similarly beginning to shift away from the aspirations of lending only to acceptable borrowers. And I think as you look further around beyond finance, matters such as sanctions and the license to operate or the sort of ESG requirements, many things to contemplate. But I think for me, given the heading which I was asked to touch on, I would say that different countries will address these things in different ways. And even the expressions will mean different things to different people. Thank you, Jocelyn.
Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation.
Jocelyn, you're on mute. Jocelyn, you're on mute.
No, I can hear.
Am I on mute?
No, I can hear you.
Can you hear?
Okay.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Yeah. Sorry. Oh, thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. I think I'll just follow up with the question to Professor Paul Griffin. What advice would you give to energy lawyers and other professionals who desire to expound their career opportunities globally? Would like to hear from you.
What a big question, Jocelyn. I would say some personal comments. I mean, I was fortunate to have worked with some great people when I was young to instill a culture in me, which was that if you are lucky enough to do well, then you have a duty to give back and to write and to speak and to mentor and actually to help other people. And if you are fortunate to be successful, then you have greater abilities to help others. Some sort of homespun comments, I think, Jocelyn, on your question. One is respecting and valuing everybody. And that really does mean developing and maintaining relationships, building contacts, often called networks nowadays, but really very important to recognize that those relationships are likely to endure. I think also that circumstances overtake positions. And this to me is a really important one. Your dealings with an individual one day may change very much the next day when that individual moves to a new position. You may do, in that you don't know what's coming next. The balance of the relationships over particular positions from time to time, I think is a powerful one. One other comment I think is just individual or institution. And I know when I first moved law firms, having become a partner in a law firm, and then the law firm moved in one direction, and as an individual, I felt that wasn't in my interests. but really difficult as you first test, am I committed to my institution or am I looking more to my career? And I think probably just 4 quick comments to finish. One is stay humble. One is show enthusiasm in everything. That earns opportunities. And whatever opportunities you do have, you will always depend on others. So be sure to value them.
Thank you so much for your response. I'm sure our attendees have grasped 1 or 2 things from the presentation. And now I'd like to move to the next presenter. So we have Ms. Penina Ahiba. She is a Director of Technical Support Services at the Petroleum Authority of Uganda. And I'll just highlight her question so that she can also just present it after her presentation. So Ms. Penina, did you have a hard time starting out in the industry? How did you overcome these challenges? So we'd like to hear from you. She has a presentation and I would like to welcome you to the floor. Thank you. Ms. Penina?
Jocelyn, she mentioned
Yes.
that I think her network is acting out. I don't know if she has joined us. Maybe we can go on the.
Okay, we can go to the,
yes.
Yeah, we can go to the next presenter. All right. So the next presenter is Ms. Benita. She is a co-founder at Albertine Oil and Gas. Then her question is, what has been your success pillars in the energy sector? Would you do anything differently if you're given the opportunity to do so? I think it's a very interesting question, and we would like to hear from you, Ms. Benita. You're welcome.
Thank you, Jocelyn, and a good afternoon to everybody, the panelists and the viewers. Very interesting question, because I don't have a technical background. I was not in oil and gas. My background is marketing. And so I had been basically always talking and discussing about our natural resources in Africa and talking about how we must get involved in our natural resources, until one day I realized, who's the we? I've got to be the we. I can't keep talking about we doing or participating. And so when Uganda discovered oil in 2006, I decided I will join the oil and gas industry. And I did that in 2016. I just jumped into the deep end and basically self-taught, and I've learned everything along the way. My biggest pillar is being fearless. And I think fear tends to hold us back. Fear holds us back from pursuing our dreams. Fear holds us back from taking risks. Fear holds us back from the unknown. And if I was afraid, I would not have got into this industry, because, you know, when you hear about oil and gas, it seems so unreachable. But I knew that I must participate. I knew that I must find a way of participating. And what I did was ask questions and research and go to our Petroleum Authority Uganda, go to Uganda Chamber of Mines, talk to people that I knew from different countries that have been in this industry, attend conferences, and got encouraged along the way to participate. So for me, being fearless is one of the biggest, my biggest pillars. The second one is being in this industry, and this is very new in the region. You've got to be patient. At these times, I felt like giving up, especially in 2019, when some of the international oil companies had pulled out and we couldn't see a near, we had no idea what was going to happen to the industry in Uganda in a very short term. So having given up all my my businesses and putting all my energy in this industry, just wondering, what do we do now? Do we just stick it out? Is it going to change? So being patient, having faith without even knowing what's going to happen. Look at what happened in 2020. None of us knew that things were going to change drastically. But riding it out, 2020, 2021, we're in 2022, but we're still in faith that things are going to change. Then comes the global crisis. It's as if everything is happening at the same time. Again, having faith and knowing that it's going to happen, but also putting in the time to do research and also having mentors. And when we were growing up, we didn't have mentors like you do today. What I would do was sort of just look at the people in around me that were having certain success, that were in leadership positions, and just go up to them and watch them and follow them. But we did have organized, let's say, mentors. So for me, those are the things that have kept me going: the faith, being fearless, and patience. I would do it again without a doubt. I would do it again. Thank you very much.
Wow, I think that's very, very wonderful. And I can believe that our speakers are literally giving us tips on success pillars, which they have experienced in their career progression. So thank you very much, Ms. Penina, for your sharing. So is Ms. Penina available right now? Or we can move to the next speaker as we still wait for her. So the next speaker is Engineer Gaia. So he is a former Secretary General of African Petroleum Producers Organization. And we would like to hear from you, especially on the advice that you would give the youth to help them balance different job aspects in their career. So we can see that you have been a success pillar in your different career progression, and we would like to hear from you. You are welcome. Engineer Gaia.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Do you hear me?
Good afternoon.
Yeah, okay,
Yes.
thank you very much. Yes, I'm Engineer Muhammad Lawan Gaya from Republic of Niger. So the question you raised is, what advice would you give the youth to help them balance different job aspects in their career? But first of all, you have already introduced myself, so I would like to inform you that I'm not English speaker. I'm from Francophone country. So I've worked in many countries in the world, but few English-speaking countries. It's in Nigeria, but the problem of Nigeria, so I'm speaking Hausa at the same time. So it's difficult in countries such as Nigeria to improve my English. So your question is very important. It's very important because this matter, I think that is not within my competence only alone. However, I would like to respond as parent and as former member of government. So Dr. Narule should tell you that I was minister in my country some years ago. So on the basis of these two caps, we have enormous responsibilities for the professional orientation of our children. We must encourage them as parents. And as an official, we must create conditions for young people to access higher education, moreover here in Africa. Because we have a lot of problem of unemployment in Africa, and most of young people leave schools earlier if I take my own case, after high school, which I did in French language, I told you that I'm from country. So I got the opportunity to do university studies for engineering training in Azerbaijan, former Soviet Union. So for 6 years, I did my studies in Russian language. So I can tell you that now, currently, I'm feeling more comfortable speaking Russian than English. So back to my country, I still engaged to another university courses in management in United States of America in English. So I'm speaking a lot of language and I have a lot of profile, engineer, manager. So after this adventure, I had no problem for my professional integration in public sector. I worked for private sector in banking, 10 years in bank, and as international civil servant. I worked at African Development Bank, at UNDP, United Nations Development Bank, and as Secretary General of African Petroleum Producers Organization. It's like African OPEC. So I took my exam and all my children, I sent them study in China because after secondary school in Niger, they study in French, but I sent them in China where they studied in English and Mandarin. And the advice I have to give, I say that as parent and as official. So all our youth should try to have studies in higher education. If they go to higher education, I think that they could have a lot of opportunities. And we as officials, we have to create these opportunities to allow our young people to access to university studies. It's just what I would like to say about your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We can see that you have overcome all the challenges throughout your career path. And we believe that those are tips rather, which people should take away from your short presentation, which was very swift and straight to the point. So we can move on to the next presenter. We're going to have a question and answer session at the end of the second panel session. So just send in all your questions and we are going to respond to them. So the next presenter is Professor Eduardo. He is the founding partner at the International Energy Law Group. And our question for you today would be, have you experienced major setbacks or blocks in your career path? How did you address these setbacks? So we would like to hear from you and your experience in the sector. You can also comment on the, you can also comment on the theme, which is reflecting on the global energy crisis and its impact on different countries. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am actually speaking today from Porto, Spain, Trinidad and Tobago. I teach here at the University of West Indies. I also have a relationship and I've been actually teaching, working in several parts of the world. And then actually I'm originally from Brazil. I actually started my career working actually in some oil and gas companies in Brazil. Then I moved to Europe. I did my master, my PhD in Aberdeen. Then I moved to London. I spent some time working some law firms. Then I spent some time in Oxford as well as a postdoc. Then I moved for corporate reasons in a company I used to work. I moved to different parts of Europe, from Vienna, from Amsterdam, and briefly as well in Switzerland. Then I moved to Africa. Spent some time working in different parts of Africa, from Sudan, from actually Chad, Morocco, spent some time in Angola, Mozambique, Ethiopia, and you name it, several other places, including Nigeria. Then also I had the one major setback in my career is that when for different reasons we decided to move in different directions. So I left this company I was working for and the groups of company for several times on my life. I was still very young. I think I'm still fairly young as well, but actually at the time I was on my close to a little bit less than 10 years of working experience. But then actually I had the challenge to say, okay, I spend most of my time actually working for one company. And that's the only thing I know in my life. I never worked for anyone else. And then I was like, okay, what's the next plan? Should I find another company to work for, or should I move from in-house to an external counsel, like in law firm, or should I go to academia? And because at that time I was already a PhD, I have already done some publications and books, etc. And then I decided to work into law firm, and I spent some time working in Portugal, mostly focused in the Portuguese speaking countries, mostly, for example, the Lusophone like Angola, Mozambique, and this is the main ones because my core expertise, of course, is related to oil and gas. Santo Tomé and Príncipe, they have, search for opportunities, but I haven't found any relevant amount as well. And then Guinea-Bissau and actually Cabo Verde, but not significant. And then a little bit as well, East Timor. And then I spent some time in law firms. But then I think that when I was working and then it was a new experience for me because I was used to working as in-house counsel. So I was hiring the lawyers to do the work rather than you doing the work, and then realize, of course, that the life in a law firm is a lot about billable hours. And also I was very keen as well into teaching. And of course, the law firms as well, there are some challenges in terms of where do you teach and how often you teach, and is client related, etc. Then I realized that actually that was not really what I was looking for. And then I decided to really shift towards an academia. And the challenge you face as well, you have two types of challenges. You have the academics who spend their life as academics and want to go to practitioner. And I had the opposite. I was a practitioner who want to join academia. Even though I had PhD, even though I had postdocs, even though I had several book publications, articles, and teaching experience, but I was not on my career a full-time academic, and that's like the same challenge I had when I went to publish my first book. They ask you, well, what experience do you have in publishing book? Well, you need to start somewhere, right? Like nobody would start with everybody has experience, So of course the challenge you find there, it is a combination of think about hard work and patience, because I think that you need to find the opportunity that people would believe on you. And I think that whenever you find in institutions or academia or work that your fellow colleagues and that institution do not support you, do not really embrace you, doesn't mean that they will always have to agree with you, but they have to have a positive view in terms of how can you improve, how can you develop, because I think that if you don't find in an environment that is healthy, from a mind perspective, from a career development, probably you're not in the right place, and that's where you should find the place that actually they will help you to go to your next level on exponential. Because I think doesn't matter how old you are, where have you been, and I agree with my fellow previous presenter, because I know there's a challenge, when you go to another country. Like myself, like him, I think he was from a French-speaking country originally. I'm from a Portuguese-speaking country, but I lived in more than 25 countries. I lived in Africa. I lived in the Middle East, including Tehran. I lived in Central Asia, in Siberia. I lived in most parts of Europe. And of course, I'll say that you see this challenge today as well, which is not only about, I think, energy justice, but I think about equal opportunities equality as well, because you see sometimes that it's harder for you as a foreigner to be able to get the same opportunities working abroad, because sometimes from your religion, from your ethnicity, or from your background, you face more challenges, So I think that's one thing which I'll tell for them, that doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter if you come from a poor or rich background, what type of religion or faith you might have, doesn't matter actually the hurdles, because everyone, one way or another, we face hurdles in our life. And certainly I know from my own experience, and I'm sure many of my students, when I teach, especially in like a postgrad level, like you have to work and you have to study and you might have a family. So like it is about like your grit to really progress in your career and achieve your goals. So ultimately, the key thing which I found there is that you believe in yourself. Because when I went to do my PhD as well, which I did in a really short time in University of Aberdeen, you hear from, doesn't matter where you are, what you do, people say it's impossible this, you cannot do that, etc. No, the question is not about if you can do it, and it's what's the efforts you require to do that, to reach that. So, I mean, that's why it's important when you work and you're close to your friends and your family, and your colleagues, they believe in you. Because if you do not believe in yourself, who will believe? How can you achieve this challenge, you know? And on the top of that, that's for the setbacks and challenges, etc. But the next question you asked me about the issue about the global challenge as well. I know for a fact, for example, that several parts of the world, doesn't matter where you come from, we are struggling with fuel prices. You know, some of them are struggling more than others. And that goes back to the challenge. I think Professor Griffin was mentioned briefly as well, and Victoria, is that we are dealing with competing interests and challenge at the same time. Because at one hand, you have the crisis in terms of climate change, that I think that countries, companies, individuals, society, they need to do better. They need to do more. That's for one. At the same time, you have energy security issues. Look what's going on with the global crisis in Ukraine, Russia, and how that has affected the global. It's not like just Eastern Europe, not just Europe, but globally, you know, how that affects. And look, for example, you see that even on European Union, as Professor Griffin mentioned, did a deal very recently with US, but still, they cannot just move away, switch from like today, tomorrow from gas from Russia. Doesn't matter if you like or not, but what are the consequences to tap out this gas for the whole economy, etc. US has a different perspective, you know, because they actually been investing much more in terms of oil and gas, increase the output, so they will be able to meet the mark, so they'll be less, I would say, impacted by certain global, even though they still face challenges. Even the own Joe Biden that was putting more restrictions on oil and gas leases in US to meet more climate goals, they came back to encourage more of those things because of energy crisis, you know. And then you have to forget about you cannot forget about another thing, that when you come from a global south as well, how about the issue about energy justice? You know, for example, I mean, not far from where I am right now, Guyana, which is actually would be similar when you think about, for example, in Africa, Senegal, which has recent large discoveries either from gas or oil, you know, or even if you think about Africa, Mozambique have one of the largest gas reserves in the whole continent, but how much they have managed to develop to that, you know? So when you tell to those countries who has really struggled in terms of the social developments and economic development and etc., to say that actually you cannot do this anymore, you know, like, and who's going to pay the compensation or the price, and how much these countries, these societies contributed to the energy crisis we are today. You know, look at per capita or per country, how much, for example, the Caribbean or even Guyana contributed to the CO2 emission we are up to this date. Or sometimes you have the issues that people don't talk so much.
Sorry to cut you short. Please give us your closing remarks, then we can continue the question and answer session.
Sure. So you ask me to stop or to finish?
Yes, to give us your closing remarks.
Okay, I will do my final remarks. So I think that the final point as well, that on the top of that, you have the issue to think about broader. Like, for example, Brazil recently increased their pollution, not because of energy, but because of deforestation and how you deal with agriculture. Look at the crisis right now on fertilizers, that a lot of them come from actually in the region between Russia, Ukraine, etc. So ultimately, the key point here I'm trying to say is that we need to think holistically. Many competing challenges and priorities, as you will see, might change in accordance to the needs of countries. And I agree very well with Professor Griffin that what means energy transition, what means energy justice might very well change from not even from far from global south to global to the north, but we're a very neighboring country. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Eduardo, for your presentation and your comments on the team. So we'd like to invite our last speaker for the first session, Miss Penina. I don't know if she's available right now. Miss Penina?
Jocelyn, she has told me that her network has completely failed.
Okay.
But I see like two different people signed in as Victoria Narole, so I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe
okay.
it has finally worked. I really don't know. But maybe
All right.
not.
No problem. Anyway, thank you so much to our first panelists. We have learned so much from you. We'd like to invite you to our question and answer session where we can expound more on this discussion. So I would like to invite my colleague, Mr. Zach, to continue on with the second session. Thank you very much for your time and sharing your experience with us. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jocelyn, for moderating that first session and all of the speakers in the first session as well. It was really enlightening to just hear from your experiences and some of the things that you've seen in your lives that many of us as young professionals still have yet to see. And so I think we're all getting great lessons there. My task is moderating the second session within this wonderful conference. The overarching theme for the session is testing the practicability of climate change initiatives during the global energy crisis. And I'm joined by 4 speakers that I'll introduce one by one as we dive into what they have to offer and what they have to tell us and share here today. And without much further ado, I will start with my first speaker, which would be Dr. Carol Nakle, who is the CEO of Crystal Energy, one of the leading energy consultancies in the UK, and doing great things all around the world, actually. And I'd like to dive straight into it, if she is available and if she would bless us with that, and just really ask her, with the backdrop of what Professor Paul Griffin gave us with respect to the global energy crisis and the multiple facets that exist there, how does that impact climate change initiatives? Are they still as practical as they used to be? Or are they less practical? Are they more practical? Should we be more ambitious, less ambitious? We'd really appreciate if you just give us some of your thoughts around how the current global energy crisis has now impacted the state and perhaps the form of current and maybe future climate change initiatives. Dr. Carol, are you available?
I am. Thank you very much. Just please remind me how much time I have, because I can't talk too long. So tell me. It's like.
Wow, it's that big a question. Let's say 5 minutes. Is 5 minutes a good time to just give an overview?
Yeah, because you see, it's a very, very big subject. But first of all, I want to thank you for having me with you. Dr. Victoria and I have been collaborating for years now, and I appreciate her having me with you for this very important discussion. Well, I tell you why I asked how much time I have, because almost every day I have to give several TV interviews and radio interviews, and suddenly it feels as if the world has woken up on something that we all knew was happening, and how to deal with the current energy crisis that we are facing, particularly in Europe, where we saw gas pricing increasing by more than 600% in a few months' time, oil prices increasing and jumping from almost minus 40 in April 2020 for West Texas Intermediate to almost $140 2 weeks ago, and now they are still above 100 as we speak. And then remember also last year in April 2021, if I'm not mistaken, either April or May, the International Energy Agency published a report, their flagship report called a net zero target by 2050 or net zero by 2050. And there they recommended that we should not, if we were to achieve those targets, we should not invest anymore in developing oil and gas fields beyond 2021. But fast forward a few months later, so here we are in 2022, we're talking about, just now as we speak, the EU and the US announced a big deal to send more LNG to Europe from the US. We also heard about how European countries are going to invest in building LNG terminals to get LNG imports from elsewhere. We also heard about some countries such as, for example, the UK, how they want to turn again to the North Sea to encourage investment. So in less than a year or almost a year, we have shifted our attention by 180 degrees from stop investing in oil and gas, it's over, it's the age of green energy, to talking about, no, hold on a minute, we're a bit rushed by our conclusion and we have to be more practical. So this is where I think I would put the concept of practicability of climate change. I'm a big believer in the need to safeguard the climate and the earth, because everybody's suffering from changes in the climate. But as an economist, I'm an energy economist by background, I fear there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there is some kind of detachment between what you hear from, I don't know, leaders of some NGOs or some policymakers living on what is popular at the moment, and then what is happening on the ground. And why I say that, because I'm, like many of you, come from a developing economy, actually a very poor economy, that is Lebanon. And I grew up during the Civil War. I know how it feels not to have electricity. I know how it feels not to have hot water, not to have your basic needs met. And then I remember when I started doing my energy postgraduate degree in the UK, I would go back to Lebanon and tell my mom, oh, you have to be careful with electricity consumption. Say, leave me alone. I don't even have electricity to worry about being efficient with my electricity consumption. So there is also the issue of energy poverty, access to which is a basic need. People talk about gaining access to the internet as your basic need, but there is more, one step before that it's access to energy, because you need energy to develop economically, to lift many people out of poverty. And this angle seems to be detached from many discussions when you hear about the G20 or the developed economies, the rich economies sitting together and talking about climate change. I can see where they are coming from, but climate change is a global problem, and therefore you have to take into consideration the very big spectrum of countries around the world that have different needs and different priorities. So this is something that we have to add a degree of realism. I don't like the polarized debate, the climate change deniers who say, no, we should forget about climate change and continue burning fossil fuel as if there is no tomorrow. But I'm also not keen on the fanatism around climate change, which forgets the reality, particularly of the poorer world. But it's not only the poorer world, because now this energy crisis that's happening in Europe, that is happening in many countries around the world, is a wake-up call for the richer economies that we should think about the energy transition more of integrating different fuels rather than substituting them because of the technical challenges. So if you were to move everything to get your electricity solely from renewable energy, you need a reliable energy storage system, so that the additional energy that you get from the sun, which, because if you don't consume electricity straight away, you're going to waste it. So you want to be able on a sunny day to get that electricity generated, store it, and use it in the night when the sun is shining or when the wind is not blowing, for example. And to date, if you look at energy storage, yes, we are having major developments, but we're not yet at the point where we feel we can say with certainty, with confidence, that we can ditch any backup needs. Let's say no need for natural gas as a backup, no need for coal as a backup. We're not there yet. And as long as the technology is not there yet, we should think practically. We should think about encouraging enough investment in conventional fuels, particularly oil and gas, while supporting the development of green energy, of renewable energy, until the technology is readily available to allow us to move away. And this takes me to one more point, because in addition to my commercial hat, I've kept my academic hat. So I'm the CEO of Crystal Energy, but also I've been teaching at academic institutions in the UK and elsewhere. And one thing I noticed that also some of these academic institutions, they want to move away from courses that relate to oil and gas, because they say that does not appeal anymore to students, or that does appeal to funders. Maybe that is true, because people feel like students, graduates or people who want to pursue a degree, they come to me and they say, I don't want to go into oil and gas because there is no future for me. But I think after this crisis, we're going to see that the mindset is going to change. But let me tell you another thing. There was an interesting study published a few months ago showing that 80% of the skills that are used in oil and gas can be also applied in cleaner energy. So they are not mutually exclusive. But also universities should also strike a balance between move away from just dogmatic thinking about the energy transition and say we're going to cover all energy. If you claim to give courses in energy, then you have to give all the energy sources, I would say, equal attention so that you come up with the most practical answer. So this is just some of the things I wanted to share with you, and I'll be happy to take some questions. I may have to leave you for 10-15 minutes later on, but I'll come back for the Q&A only because I have an interview exactly on what we are discussing right now. Thank you very much for your patience and your attention.
That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for that. That was, you were right to ask how much time you have, because I could tell that there was more to unpack. And this wasn't the end of the discussion on this subject. If you will indulge us with one more question before you run, and then rejoin us later around the Q&A. It's that in your career, which you have done quite a few things in, I'm sure there have been challenges. And I think that's one of the things that we're curious about hearing. Not necessarily just the challenges that you face, but particularly some of the hardest choices that you've had to make in order to get to the place that you're at in your career right now, which undoubtedly is quite impressive, but could not have come easy. I think that we'd appreciate if you could share with us one of the hardest choices you've had to make in getting to where you are.
I mean, that's a fantastic question and will make me think a lot. But if I were to summarize perhaps major challenges, I mean, apart from, for example, the language or the culture, because I came from a country where I had my education in French and Arabic, and I went to the UK to do it in English. But I think if you're determined to do something, to get something done, you can do it. And here I am, I'm publishing, speaking all the time in English. But I would say perhaps one of them, I wouldn't call it challenge because I love challenge and I embrace them. But something that I felt was sometimes holding me back is people's perceptions, other people's prejudices. And you have to really develop a thick skin to don't allow that noise distract you from your targets. So you have to be stubborn and you have to be really, I mean, you should take other people's feedback into consideration. That is very, very important. But don't let it confuse you, because we can look at the same thing from different angles. And it's good to hear other people's perspective, but at the end, it's your future. You know what you like, you know what you enjoy, you know what you are passionate about. If I tell you what I like, maybe it looks right from my perspective, but it doesn't fit your ambition. So take my view into consideration, but always go back to your core, to what you believe the most. And I think that was the biggest challenge, because don't forget, I come from a culture where it's largely male dominated. And I come from a family where I had 2 brothers older than me. I had to challenge my family when I told them I was leaving Lebanon, and I'm the youngest in the family, to go to a country where they knew nothing about. Nobody in my family ever went to the UK. We know about France, but even that, nobody went to France. To a country I didn't speak the language, and to do a topic that my family had never heard of. I mean, they didn't know even the difference between oil and gas. And I realized I didn't have to convince them what it was about. I just have to tell them this is what I believe I can succeed in. And you have to have the same belief in me. And actually, my father was very supportive. He said, I don't know what you're going to do, but I know you can do it if you get your mind around it. And as long as I get this kind of strong support from the person that meant the most to me, the rest became noise. Of course, people would discourage you around the way, but there are other people that will encourage you. And that's key, to find those whether you want to call them mentor or friend or supervisor, you name it, but they are those that will help you to grow. Don't stick around too many people that hold you back. Stick around people who really raise you up and believe in what you are really passionate about, and do it because you can if you get your head around it. It may sound a cliche, but I'm sure many of you can relate to what I'm saying.
Zah, can I just cut you? Dr. Karen Nakla is one of the people I really look up to. Most people always say, Victoria, you're so active, but I'm like, whenever I wake up and I see Dr. Carol doing something, I'm like, you know what, Victoria, you need to do a lot of work. So I'm not a moderator for this, but I just wanted to just jump in and say, I appreciate you, I admire you a lot. And thanks a lot for honoring this invitation, because I know many people will be inspired, because I do really get inspired by all the work you're doing.
Thank you so much. And you're also an inspiration to many people around, including myself, Victoria. Thank you.
Wow, that was a beautiful exchange. I'll have to say that was a moment. It was really nice to see as someone who also sits and watches the both of you excel and thinks similar things about both of you. To see you share that with each other is also absolutely just it's a moment that I think many people here are sharing with you. So thank you guys for putting that right here for us to see as well. Dr. Carol, I know that you have to leave us in a second, and so for that reason, I think we'll smoothly transition over to the next speaker and see you in a little bit. But thank you very much for your insights there, especially as far as developing a thick skin is concerned, as we face challenges moving forward. Thank you for that. What we're going to do at this stage is we're going to move on to our next speaker, and we would kindly invite up Dr. Joffrey Mabea, who sits as the Executive Secretary of the Energy Regulators Association of East Africa, who also has quite a credential with him, and is also an equally impressive person as all the panelists here are today. Are you with us, Dr. Joffrey?
I'm here.
Wonderful. Good to have you. It's really good to have you here, especially as someone who operates on a regional level and not only at a country level, as you sit in your position as Executive Secretary. The question I'll have for you, as someone who sits in your position, I'm sure you have seen many people come and go within the institution that you work and operate in. And I'm sure you've seen some people fail and some people succeed as you've gone along your journey. I think one question that we'd all be curious in knowing about as someone who sits at an executive level is, what are some of the skills that young people within the energy sector should acquire to help them get forward? Probably that you've seen other young people have, or some of your peers have, or that you have, that you think helped you move much further than other people and not fall off the path along the way. So any skills that you think, either hard skills or soft skills, that you think the youth should really be investing in?
Thank you so much, and thank you, the fellow panelists, and also my listeners. Thank you for inviting me to this great panel. Maybe before I delve into the question that you've just asked, I would like also just to point out that Dr. Nakle was my lecturer some 10 years back. So I'm proud to see her here, and I'm really happy that we've been able to meet again, at the University of Surrey. Just to go back to what you've asked, ideally, I'm an energy economist, but I started as a geomatic engineer. And so I worked as a geomatic engineer for some time, as a geospatial engineer, but then later on I transitioned to the energy sector. And so I had to position myself in such a way that I can be able to grow in the industry, and also to be able to learn more, to be able to fit in within the energy industry. Now, we have a variety of skills. Someone who probably is interested in joining the energy industry can be able to pursue. We have general courses, and also we have very specific courses. You need to identify which area you really want to pursue. But as my fellow speakers had earlier indicated, energy is wide. We have electricity, we have oil and gas, and both are really very good areas that you can be able to immerse yourself in. Personally, I pursued both. When I did my postgraduate, I mostly delved on the oil and gas, and then when I was doing my PhD, I went back to the electricity. So I'm able to really fit in any of these subsectors. But I wanted to point out that as young, maybe students who probably want to join the energy sector, we have various points of entry. You can join in as an economist, you can join in as an energy, you can join in as, we have environment, there are many points of entries, and we have very many areas which you can be able to, to shape in yourself and also to fit in very nicely. What you need to really focus on is you need to, you need to delve into the area that you really interests you, and don't fear to face challenges. Really, you need to be ready to learn new ways, new techniques, and to unlearn bad habits. I want to give you an example, like when I was doing my postgraduate, I really didn't know anything about programming. And so I was modeling the power system for East Africa. At first I started with the Excel, and after running the model, the Excel gave me, one day the Excel gave me a notice that, you have many variables. And so when I went back to my supervisor, well, I'm stuck. Well, he said, could you please try programming? But I didn't know anything about programming. But I had to immerse myself to learn new ways and new tricks to learn programming, and within 4 months I was able to program and be able to that way I was able to finish my PhD. So be ready to learn, be ready to, such conferences are really ideal, perfect platforms where you can be able to learn new ways and also interact with people who've been in the energy sector for a while, to be able to see how they have moved and which area you can be able to to delve in. Lastly, I want second last point is invest in your social capital. It's very important to be able to have trusting, sustainable networks. Create your networks. Be able to interact with other people, especially in the energy sector. Also reach out to even your colleagues and those people who've been there for a while, so that you can be able to learn on how they have made to where they are at the moment. And lastly, I want to point out one more thing, that when you pursue a specific goal, or maybe you have an objective to carry out a specific task, please, whatever your hands finds to do it with all your might. It's very critical. It's very important. Anything where you start from, please do it with all your might. After that, you'll find out many other avenues coming along, and you can be able to delve, you can be able to advance to whichever level. But that position that you've been given, or that item or that objective you want to pursue, please do it with all your might. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that answer. I think it's so impactful, and it really reminds me of a quote that says there's no such thing as a small job, or no such thing as a small task. And that's a one-way mentality to go straight down. But the moment you take any task, big, small, however you perceive it, and really do it to the best of your ability and high quality, then only rewards can flow from there. And so I think you had a really powerful insight to share there. And with that said, I'd like to move on to our third speaker on our panel here today, which would be Ms. Marielle Tulekima, actually, who currently sits as a senior petroleum engineer and a global energy and STEM consultant. And she also stands as a woman empowerment advocate, who really is a very impressive woman to have with us here today. Ms. Marielle, are you with us? Ms. Marielle. Ladies and gentlemen, I think she might be experiencing one or two technical issues at this stage, maybe with her internet connection or something similar to that. But that's okay. That's okay. That's not a problem at all, because we'll move on to Professor Damilola, who is one of those last but certainly not least individuals. Prof. Damilola Olawi serves as the Chancellor Fellows and Director at the UGIS Institute at the AB UAD, and is really one of the a really high class academic, if I may say so myself, and really fits into the glowing panel that we have here today and the other glowing academics that sit here. And so I will ask at this stage, Prof. Damilola, are you with us? Prof. Damilola, I don't happen to see his name here.
I see two names signed in as Victoria Nalule, so I don't know if it's Professor Damilola and Ms. Mirella. I really don't understand. Maybe it's the network issue.
Yeah, no. It can very easily be a networking issue, or a network issue rather, but that's okay. That does happen sometimes. Our internet does fail us, as much as we love our internet and our internet loves us sometimes. But I think with that, my panel may be a little bit shorter than originally anticipated. And so perhaps, Dr. Victoria, you can give some guidance as to whether it's perfectly fair and fine for me to wrap up my part of the panel and we proceed on to the list of questions that we've been provided, or whether it's perfectly fine for me to perhaps invite one of the other panelists back on for another go at one or two questions, if they are up for sharing what they have.
I think at this moment in time, let's have Kenneth go ahead with the Q&A, and then what we shall do, because we want it to be as interactive as possible, we shall allow the other participants or attendees to share their videos, share their views, since we still have some little time. But if you had a particular question to one of the panelists, then that's okay. First bring them back, because you'll still have some time.
Can I?
Yes.
I might be able to have a little bit of fun.
That will be okay.
I might be able to have a little bit of fun here now. I want to see whether any of the panelists are still here, whether it's Dr. Joffrey or Dr. Carol. I think either of them can pick this up. I don't know if Dr. Carol Nakla is still here. I know she might be with her interview, but my question that I think might be relevant for both of them is on networking, actually. It's on networking, and my question really sits on how one goes about building meaningful networks. I think we've all heard about the importance of networking and how it can really bring you forward and propel you and so on and so forth. But I think many young people hear the word networking, but they don't know how to add action to that phrase, to that statement. And so if either of the doctors that have graced us moments ago have any, I want to say, more actionable steps regarding meaningful networking and actually building a strong, not a strong network in a broad sense, but perhaps a strong network on an individual sense, I think any insights with respect to that will really go a long way for the up and comers.
Can I start with that, because then I can leave you afterwards, if that is okay.
Perfectly fine.
That is a magical question, if you want. That always a magical thing, because I tell you what, I always tell my students when they enroll in a master's degree or a PhD degree, I say, don't underestimate the power of networking. And networking is not just about exchanging cards or just attending events. First of all, there are lots of events happening on energy. Yes, now it's more virtual because of COVID reality, but that is gradually going back to normal in person. But even if you do it virtual, make yourself notable. Ask a question. So take it as a rule that each event you attend, you ask a question. You say who you are, and then you ask that question. Now you might say, oh, we do that, but nobody has noticed us. You know, that's something I said to my real mentor maybe 25 years ago. And when he was telling me to write and publish articles, and I said, what's the point? No, I've been writing and publishing and nobody has ever gotten back to me on those. And he said, you'll be amazed how suddenly, maybe 5 years down the line, a key person comes to you and say, you know what, I read your work a few years ago and I would like to collaborate with you. And I'm telling you from my own experience. In 2000, I forgot the year, I think 2008, 2009, when I left my job with Statoil, which is now Equinor, I did not actively look for another job. I want to take some time off to do some writing. But then out of the blue, I received a call from then, it was on behalf of a person who was calling on behalf of the CEO of the Italian company AEMI. And the first thing he told me, because I was not really expecting that call, he said, I'm calling you on behalf of Mr. Paolo Scaroni. I said, who? Not because I did not know who he was, but I did not really expect that call. And until today, even though I took a job with them and I worked with them for a couple of years and it was an amazing experience, but until today, nobody can remember how my CV ended on the desk of the CEO of one of the largest oil companies in the world. And he called me straight away to offer me a job. So it wasn't even only inviting me for interviews or they had a job available for me. So the point I'm trying to make here is don't despair. You should not expect magical solutions. These don't happen, yeah? But make yourself notable, because one person goes and tell 10 others about you. Each one of those 10 go and tell 10 others about you, and everything expands exponentially. But for people to talk about you, you have to make yourself visible. Showcase your expertise. Write, blogs, write comments. People post a lot on social media. You can comment on there and what they are saying. You can ask questions related to what they are saying. And when you have physical events, make the effort to go and attend those events. Be engaged. When I did my PhD, I made sure that I would attend lots of industry events. I presented at conferences, but I also did a survey. There was one chapter of my PhD that was a survey, and that allowed me to get in touch with people from the industry, telling them, I would like to interview you for this piece of research I'm doing. And that also allowed me to have this kind of interaction. There are lots of groups as well on social media. You can join them for free. Access Women and Energy, a group I started in 2007. There, it's a networking platform. You can join, you can see who is there. But there are also some organizations, especially for students, they don't charge any fee. And some, they charge very tiny fee. It's also good to be, if you were to join those organizations, to be an active member and not a passive member. So there's a lot you can do. Don't expect miracles. They might happen. Somebody might call you on the spot. But I guess, don't lose hope that somebody might pick up the phone and give you a call out of the blue because they heard about their work or somebody recommended them to you or whatever. It happened to me, and it can also happen to you.
Stellar. Absolutely stellar. Really, really practical information there that people can actually write down and immediately go out and apply immediately today. And I think that was really the essence of what that question was trying to get at, in terms of what can someone leave with right now. And I mean, one of the easiest ones is, okay, I'm doing research, I'm doing a survey, and you start reaching out to all of the people where you may want a job or who you want to make an impression with. And then you have your shot, you have your 15-minute interview, and you get to introduce yourself, and who knows where it will end up. So
can I add one thing, just an advice, because as the CEO of Crystal Energy, I get these emails all the time. There are emails I would not respond to, and there are emails I prefer not to see at all. Some people reach me on LinkedIn and they say, hello, my name is XYZ. Can you tell me about crystal energy? That is a killer. I don't respond because they did not do their work. They did not do their homework to check what crystal energy does. And whereas somebody that I took on board with Crystal, they pinpointed something we did at Crystal and they wanted to engage in a conversation on that thing. And they knew exactly what we were doing. So don't be lazy. Second, avoid these emails. My name is blah, blah, blah. I would like you to help you to find a job. That is a killer. This strategy does not work. So avoid this because you may be lucky somebody might like this approach, but I'm telling you in general, it doesn't get you that far. Sorry, I had to interrupt because I have to leave you now, but thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I think that was the perfect way to close that off. Just don't be lazy. When you're approaching people who don't have time and who are doing important things, you have to respect that time and value their work. And sometimes it just takes a bit of research. And if you really want to make an impression, a lot of research to stand out. So I think that's perfect. It's sobering. It's very sobering and a reality check. At this stage, I'll say, Dr. Joffrey, I don't know whether there's anything you want to expand on as we continue to wrap up the discussion on really effective networking, really being effective at going out there in meeting people and creating meaningful engagements and turning those into opportunities.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think Dr. Carol has really covered what I wanted to say, but I want to add maybe some few things, some few tips on what I've used before, in addition to really be seen to be active and also being proactive in various sessions that maybe you can be able to attend, maybe meetings or conferences or something like that. But also when you're looking at your social media, for example, LinkedIn, please make sure that your profile is good. Don't just write there your name for the sake of writing. Have your profile stand out. The little that you have done or what you've already covered, please let it stand out. I want to point out also on some few other elements that I wanted maybe especially for the young ones who are yet to pursue their postgraduate studies. Networking is very critical, and actually that's how I was able even to secure my scholarships. Networking is very, very, very critical, but also you need to be able to, you need to prepare yourself. You need to prepare yourself to be able to engage anyone and get the right language or the right approach. But don't fear anyone. Be courageous and be able to engage them. Get to know what you want to do, target the audience and maybe the individual, and present your case. I think that is one of the greatest points that you can be able to do. If you fear, then you'll not be able to achieve really what you want to achieve. Target and be very strategic on the approach and how you can be able to reach out to the individual or maybe the organization that you're interested in. Thank you.
Wow, thank you for that one. I think that is one element of not only networking, but I think being a young professional that gets overlooked or that slides under the rug. It's that idea that when you first start off in a career, you see all these big people with big titles and 20, 30 years of experience, and they've done these massive projects, and there's that sense of fear or imposter syndrome that sets in, and oftentimes it may make a young professional not even want to reach out to someone or be anxious and nervous about how to reach out to people, and because of that, you don't even get out of the starting blocks. So you can't even apply the useful tips on networking or how to build a project or your other soft or hard skills because you never took the risk in the first place. So I think your words on being courageous are so important as a first step to making anything else happen. And I think that it's a wonderful way to close off the second session as far as the mentors' insights are concerned here, or at least my questions on them are concerned. And so at this stage, I'd like to gracefully hand over to our colleague, Kennedy Chege, who's currently a researcher, PhD candidate, a lecturer, and also legal practitioner in South Africa. And he's the AEMI representative in South Africa. And so if you would grace us, then please do take it away, Kennedy.
Thank you very much, Zach, for that wonderful moderation. Thank you to the panelists and speakers for the presentations. And without much further ado, I'd like to welcome you all to the Q&A session. We have received quite a number of questions in the Q&A section. So I will just go straight into it for the sake of time. I see we only have slightly over 30 minutes. So I noted some of the questions from the audience. And to begin with, I'll start with the first one from Salam Ali. And this was addressed to Ms. Benita. What do you see as, he asks, what do you see as a major impediment to the smooth supply of oil and gas among African countries? I know this has partially been addressed by Honorable Muhammad, but then if you could please shed some more light. Ms. Benita, I don't know if you can hear me. I think you're still on mute.
I can hear you, Kennedy. Thank you, Kennedy.
Thank you.
I think our biggest impediment is our mind, our mentality as Africans. We've got to change the way we think. We've got to look inwardly and not look outwardly to resolve our issues. I think we need to add value to extractives. We need to have refineries, we need to build pipelines, and we need to devise ways in doing that. Uganda has fought, for example, to have a refinery so that we can cater for Uganda's oil and gas and neighboring countries. We're getting a pipeline all the way through Tanzania. We're going to get put up a gas pipeline from Tanzania. There's gas pipelines from Mozambique to South Africa. We need to improve our infrastructure and start trading with each other. So we need to think differently and stop exporting raw materials and always buying refined products. Mental change is what we need. And that's our biggest impediment, I think. Thank you
very much, Ms. Benita. Moving on swiftly, we have another question from Mr. Fortunate Kusima. He's an accountant and is keen to join the oil and gas sector. So his question is, do I need to have more qualifications in regards to oil and gas to join the sector? I know this has also been partially answered by Dr. Mabea. So I would like to address this to him, just in case he has any further remarks on this. Dr. Joffrey?
Sorry for that. If you may repeat again.
So this was a question from Mr. Fortunate Kusima. He's an accountant by profession, but would like to transition to the oil and gas industry. So he asks, do I need to have more qualifications in regards to oil and gas to join the sector? Or what would he require to be able to transition into the sector?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ken. What I need to point out is that the oil and gas sector, or maybe the energy sector, is not limited to specific probably experts or maybe people in a specific area of study. As an auditor, I believe you, or maybe an accountant, you can very easily move into the energy space, and there are very many areas which you can be able to anchor yourself. As an accountant, we do a lot of things, especially in the oil and gas, even costing and several other elements, even auditing element in itself. There is a lot. Now, when you want to advance, maybe you want to learn more about the energy, you may do some other courses, probably postgraduate courses, or maybe diploma courses, or even certificate courses on specific areas, so that you can easily find it easier, to understand some of the elements. You do not have like a specific, I wouldn't really advocate for, limiting yourself to auditing. but you can do other courses. For example, you've done accounting. You can very easily do probably a course in oil and gas, for example, or maybe electricity markets. Then you can very easily learn more on what you already have and build upon what you already have. It's about also researching and reading. I had indicated earlier that be ready to learn and to unlearn. Learn new ways and learn new techniques. Be able to advance yourself from wherever you are. You can always advance from any field. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Doctor. That was very comprehensive. And then now I'll move on to a question by Osman Anis. This is quite lengthy, but it's directed towards Professor Griffin. So he says, I do have a question, please. I'm currently doing the LLM International Energy Law and Policy at CEP MLP, as I'm very interested in enhancing my oil and gas energy capabilities. I'm also qualified in Morocco and have 2 years experience with an international law firm. Speak fluently 3 languages with full professional competence, but it just seems frustrating and very hard to get my foot on the door in my research, finding a job in London, for example. Is it because I don't have much exposure or networks in the city? Am I not fit to get a job at a city firm? It's a little bit frustrating. What would you recommend? Also would love to be mentored by you, Prof. Griffin, if you accept. I can reach out. Thanks a lot. That's from Osman Anis. To you, Prof.
Well, thank you, and I hope I can do justice to the excellent question. Looking for jobs as lawyers within London firms is a very competitive market. I wouldn't say that you should take things badly. It is very competitive, and many people do seek those roles. My feeling would be that the more that you can bring to your application, the better for you. If you're at the centre in Dundee, that is an excellent place to be. I think in addition to that, looking to join the bodies of the oil and gas business. So the International Bar Association has student sections. The Association of International, what was Petroleum Negotiators, which is now Energy Negotiators, so AIEN, again has strong student body and also support for attending conferences. In some ways, I suppose what I'm saying is building on the networking advice we've had, really good practical advice on networking. So I would say take those to heart. I would say there aren't really very many shortcut ways into working within London law firms or the bar in London, other than bringing as much as you can to your applications. There are a number of ways of working within firms. There are a number of schemes where you can attend those firms. These may be vacation placements or formal applications. I think also looking at each of the firms' websites, what they're participating in, matching your skills and your experiences to the things the firms do. And if you're looking from a distance, all the big law firms look the same, and they are not by any means. If you look through what they publish, where they appear, what's on the websites, you will find those which suit you more than others. And I would say those are the ones to concentrate on. And I think maybe just a couple of quick comments. And I love the advice that we've already had in relation to networking, career building, and I would endorse that. I think I'd also say, do be prepared to give, to contribute, to participate without expecting a return. It really does matter. Enthusiasm goes a long way. So providing that. Do be prepared to ask as well. A lot of people don't ask now. And I had the benefit of being brought up by a couple of excellent mentors, as they would be called now. But one of them used to say to me, you have to recognize that there's a progression within your career. When you are a young person, enthusiasm and bright and willingness and having an inquiring approach to things goes a long way. And actually, for every 10 things you do, provided you get one good one, everybody forgets the 9 bad ones you came up with because you're learning. But when you become established, that switches round. And for every 10 things you come up with, you get remembered for the 1 bad one, not the 9 bad. And I would say, do just hold that in mind. So do be confident in yourself. Be prepared to question. If you don't understand it, don't presume everybody else does. Be the person who has done their research, done their background, has worked through the available information, has come to a view, can defend that view, and is prepared to engage. And I would say that goes a long way. As to jobs within London firms, as far as possible, I would say build your networks, contribute. Really the points that Carol was making, do write to the extent you can, look for a platform where you can speak as well. And I would say try to identify those firms which you most fit and work hard at those, because you just have to be prepared to be disappointed. Not ultimately disappointed, but don't be surprised when people decline politely. It will happen.
Much, Prof. Much appreciated. Next question relates to the energy transition, and this is addressed to Professor Eduardo by Salam Ali. What do you see as the main problem to the energy transition in Africa? That is moving from the use of non-renewable energy to renewable energy in Africa.
Sorry, Kenneth, Professor Eduardo had to leave us. He had another engagement. I don't know if he's still online, but I know he had said he's leaving. Yeah, I think he has left us. But I can address the question if you can read it again.
What do you see as the main problem to the energy transition in Africa, moving away from the use of non-renewable energy to renewable energy in the continent?
All right, so like I had mentioned in the introduction, we are facing a dilemma of tackling the challenge of energy access, and specifically for African countries, because the question is really related to Africa or Uganda. You notice that most of these countries are still struggling with the issue of energy access. And by energy access, basically, it's where people don't have access to affordable, reliable, and modern energy. So in this regard, you would have to differentiate between modern energy and traditional energy. Modern energy is what we're using right now, the electricity, the gas for cooking, and then traditional energy, which is mostly rampant in most African countries. It's like firewood for cooking and candles for lighting. So if you have over 600 million people lacking access to electricity, then it's really hard to transition to a low carbon economy, because the question is, what are they transitioning from? Are you transitioning from firewood? Are you transitioning from candle to what? To electricity? And this has been a problem because now with the energy transition, basically, you note it's like you have to transition from dirty fuels, that is fossil fuels, to clean energy. But remember, this dirty fuel, oil, gas, they power most of the electricity generation in some countries, like in Southern Africa, South Africa, they mostly rely on coal. And with the current global energy crisis, we are really realizing that it's not only electricity, but still the conversion energy, it's clean transportation, it's running the economies, it's responsible for the economic development of different countries. And if you're giving the examples from Africa, you're basically faced with the issues of poverty, general poverty, whereby many people are relying on less than $1 per day. So that is poverty. How are you going to eradicate poverty if people don't have access to electricity? And how are you going to tackle the health challenges? Because with health, you're looking at hospitals. If most of these hospitals don't have access to electricity. So the dilemma is how African countries can transition to a low carbon economy, but at the same time be able to tackle the challenge of energy access and also be mindful of their economic development. So that is like the confusion we're in right now, but it's not only for African countries, because even with the developed countries right now, they're faced with the issue of affordability, which is also an aspect of energy access. They have access to electricity, they have access to modern energy, but how many people can actually afford that energy? And if you're talking about affordability, you realize that the renewable energy we are transitioning to right now, it really can't support most of the people. That's why countries are going back to invest more in fossil fuels. That's why Germany, they are thinking about reopening some old coal plants. That's why the UK, they're thinking about investing more in the North Sea. So it's not an issue of African countries, but it's a global issue that we really have to take into consideration. Whereas it's good to invest a lot in renewable energy, that shouldn't be a ground to discourage investments in fossil fuels. Because if you do that, like what we saw in 2020, with the various policies we're seeing, with the various international financial institutions banning funding for fossil fuels, if we make those mistakes, it will not only be Africa suffering, but also the developed world. So yeah, that's basically what I would answer. The issue of energy access is really, the challenges are how are you going to balance the needs to tackle climate change and also balance the needs to ensure access to modern energy, but most importantly, balance the needs of economic development. And as policymakers, as the youth, you really have to be practical. Do not be blinded. I always call this the streetlight effect, where most people would focus on a topic or a challenge that is in the limelight. And in the past few years, it has been climate change. So if you're not talking about climate change, you're not in the limelight and you'll get attacked. No, let's not be in the limelight. Let us be practical about the challenges we're experiencing and also find practical solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Victoria. And if I can ask you a follow-up question, if you don't mind. This is from Joffrey Masozi. So he asks, currently alternative or renewable energy sources in Uganda are more expensive than fossil fuels and are also unreliable. What is the strategy towards addressing this challenge? Specifically for Uganda, but it could also speak for the rest of the African continent.
Yes, yeah, it's not really an issue for Uganda only. Renewable energy have been expensive because of the technology, the unique technology that they really rely on. And this issue of affordability for renewable energy is more of a global issue, but with more investments in these types of technology and more funds being available, then that means it's possible to make renewable energy more accessible and affordable in different countries, including Uganda. So it's really more an issue of investments. We need to encourage more investments in renewable energy projects and maybe even subsidies. But I repeat, encouraging investments in renewable energy shouldn't be a basis for the investment in the fossil fuel sector, but rather you encourage investments in these projects and also invest more in clean technology, because clean technology like like carbon capture, it's very key in tackling some of the environmental impacts that are associated with fossil fuels. So we look at the problem, and no one is a climate change denier. We know we have to tackle the challenge of climate change, but how are you going to sustainably tackle that challenge of climate change without escalating the already existing energy challenges countries are facing? Because besides the African continent, you know that over 2 billion people globally don't have access to modern energy. So if we don't really tackle this now, what will happen in 2040, where it's estimated that the population growth will escalate? So if right now we have billions of people lacking access to electricity. What happens if this population escalates? What we have like 4 billion people? So we really need to think ahead and be practical with the policies we're coming up with the solutions we're coming up with, and also be practical that different countries face different energy challenges.
Thank you very much, Dr. Victoria. We also have a question from Jacqueline Namugambe. Is the world ready to live safely with nuclear energy as one of the green energy alternatives? How ready will Africa be even in 30 years?
Is that a question for me, or is that addressed to other panelists? I don't want to take over the panel. I was just stepping in for Professor Eduardo.
I will address it to the other panelists, whoever wants to jump on this question on nuclear energy. Africa's preparedness to adopt nuclear energy.
Is Dr. Mabea still with us?
I think he has dropped off. Let me see. I don't think he's still with us.
Oh, okay. Maybe Professor Griffin can give it a try.
Prof?
I am still here, Victoria and Kenny. Not sure this is really one where I have the expertise to give a proper answer. I could busk for a few minutes, but I don't think I'd be proper value.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Prof. I will move to another question. We have a question from Joel Mwesigwa. How can someone with an engineering background be able to tap into some of those opportunities? Because a lack of engineering background is locking out many people. I believe this has already been answered by Dr. Joffrey. So I'll move to another question from Salim Ali. So Salim noted that most African governments do not have any national strategic plans for their countries. How can we improve the system through both institutional and government policies? I'm also addressing this to any of the panelists. Perhaps Honorable Mohammed. Honorable Kaya, I don't know if you're with us.
But Kennedy, you're also a researcher and an expert in these areas. Do you want to give it a go? We have to showcase what some of the experts we have at AEMI. Or even Zach, sure. or even Zach, you know, we can handle these questions. So,
Zach, would you like to give it a go before I give my perspective?
And Miss Jocelyn Omondi.
I can answer the one on nuclear just after this question.
Zach, are you still with us?
I'm still with you. I might just need you to repeat that question for me.
Okay, sure. The question is, noting that most African governments do not have national strategic plans for their countries, how can we improve the system through both institutional and government policies? I presume it's towards the development of the oil and gas industry across Africa through policy.
Okay. I think I can give a few thoughts there. Although that is a question. That is a question and a half, if I may say so. I'll start off by saying that I don't think that no African governments have policies with respect to how they want to develop their oil and gas systems. There are a few African nations that have done well to develop their oil and gas systems, some of them being Equatorial Guinea. I think Ghana has done really well as far as transparency in their oil and gas system, and they've learned a lot from Norway with respect to transparency in that regard. And Nigeria has been definitely fighting to reform their legislation as far as how they're going to tackle the next phase of Nigerian oil and gas, so to speak. So I think there are a few examples out there as far as how to manage an oil and gas system, and some of the attempts that certain nations have been taking. From the perspective of a frontier nation like Namibia, and maybe there are other jurisdictions as well, where we're really trying to go from the bottom up, I think there are resources in place. I mean, I remember when I was doing my master's dissertation, a wonderful resource that I came across was a World Bank paper. I think it was by Mr. Bill Honorato, that spoke about how do you set up an oil and gas framework as far as the law is concerned. So there are resources, and I think that one of the first steps that we take as African governments is tapping into them. Tapping into those resources and using them to build a foundation of how we want to move forward. I do think that a lot of, Professor Griffin wants to hop right on board. I will cede the ground to that kind of wisdom and experience at this stage. Please help me out.
Far too generous to me. I was simply trying to catch Kenny's eye ready for when you had finished your contribution. So please excuse me for having interrupted. I did want to add, but I certainly didn't want to cut your contribution short.
I see. No problem at all. I wish you were trying to cut my contribution short, because because this is quite a question. Ultimately, to just round off, I think this will definitely come down to a lot of collaboration. And I think the question has some of the answer in it when it says from a government and institutional perspective. I think that a lot of hand-holding is necessary. And I think the starting point is really education and using the tools that are available from international institutions and collaboration at that level to develop a strategic, at least at the start, high-level policies of what to do with the resources in the ground, and then getting more and more focused as more and more international players enter the space. I think a lot of oil and gas jurisdictions have learned from trial and error, where you had a particular system and a few international companies came in and you saw what worked and you saw what didn't. And subsequently, you chopped and changed it a little bit. There were a few reforms, and then you perfected the system as it went along. And I think that, I don't want to say we shouldn't be scared to learn from trial and error, but there's enough trial and error across the continent and across the world to learn from and use that experience. So I think at that stage, I will cut my answer there and go ahead and pass it over to Prof. Griffin to take it away.
Thank you. Well, I would certainly endorse what Zach was saying there. The reason for my wanting to add something was that I think when you look at the changes which are happening now, and particularly transition and what that means, for me, it's not only the transition of which fuels are being burnt, what gases are being emitted, and that's the nature of the transition. I think more than ever, there is now a difference of the model within the oil and gas business, particularly. The traditional foreign investment, host country, antagonistic relationships over very long periods of time, that sort of model, where you then had also national oil companies in certain countries put into that as well. Well, that was very well known and it's worked, but I think things look very different now. And for me, this is a time of opportunity for many states, and particularly those states in Africa, to look through that traditional model and to look at what the energy transition offers. The ability to host those who perhaps are not the large international oil companies or the large investors, but those who are seeking to do things with new technology or differently, bringing different approaches to what the state offers, what domestic markets might look like, what export markets might look like. And I think for many of us who have spent very many years within this, the model of the obsolescing bargain, that this sort of inward investment made and then fought over for the next 25 years, that doesn't need to be the future, I think. And for me, what the energy transition also can bring is a transition of ideas and thoughts and participants. Who are the people going to be who are contributing to the energy business within individual states? And which individual states can really make something of hydropower that others may not have? Or sunlight, if you're looking at solar power. Well, why would many African countries create very large electricity networks, fixed electricity networks, when local generation can actually work? So for me, it's a transition not only of emissions, but also approaches to the answering of these questions.
If I may add one more thing right on top of that, thank you so much, Professor. For the individual who asked the question, a great book to read would be a book called Big Barrels by N.J. Ayuk. What this book does really wonderfully is it outlines stories of various African countries that have discovered oil and the glowing stories of what they've done with it. Of course, not across the board, but particular examples of, for instance, how certain countries have introduced marginal fields programs, as Prof. Griffin was speaking about, as far as not necessarily catering to the traditional massive energy companies, but seeing where you can find not only local participants, but smaller independent energy firms. The book outlines the lessons, again, as I said, that Ghana learned from Norway as far as transparency and building a sovereign wealth fund for their petroleum resources. How Equatorial Guinea used, for example, oil revenues and really did a stellar job as far as beating the resource curse by channeling oil revenues into other portions of the economy. And the list goes on as far as, maybe how Mozambique went about exploiting their gas resources, in particular, how East African countries, instead of bidding or fighting each other from a tax perspective, where one country lowers their taxes in order to attract investment, and the country next to them undercuts them, and the country next to them undercuts them, and you get into this infinite tax reduction battle between neighboring states within a region. How they came to the realization that simply providing more stability in the region with regards to their currency, their infrastructure, their imports and exports is really one of the deciding factors as to whether investment will come there or not, the ease of doing business. And you don't always have to get into a tax battle in order to do that when there are more fundamental issues to solve. And so I think that book, Big Barrels by N.J. Ayuk, as it outlines all those stories, will definitely give the individual who asked this question a lot of places to draw from as far as strategic policy, as far as how do we build an industry and how do we move the country forward, really the country forward, based on its specific nuances and objectives and what other African states have done. So I think that'll be a valuable resource for the person who asked the question.
Thank you very much, Prof. And Zach as well, for those very, very insightful responses. I'd just like to move quickly to Jocelyn. She wanted to give a response to the nuclear question, which was, is the world ready to live safely with nuclear energy as one of the green energy alternatives? How ready will Africa be even in 30 years' time? If you can just provide your responses quickly, Jocelyn.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that question. So I'll just try and give my opinion on that question. So in regards to the African continent, we have two countries in Africa which are already in the nuclear sector. We have Egypt, which already has about a 25 billion contract in nuclear energy. And we have also South Africa, which is already powering a nuclear power plant as we speak. And Kenya is also on the way, and it also has developed a policy and regulation framework. There's actually a nuclear power plant which has been kept. There's a site which is around the sides of Karen to Rogai side over there. That's where the nuclear authority is over there. And the country is trying to develop a lot of policies in regards to nuclear power for about 1 gigawatt of power plant by 2035. And then, but what I would say is, are we ready right now? Currently, no, we are not ready for that. But if we address things in regards to the project financing of such nuclear power plants, in regards to the construction risk, the market risk, the reputational risk, stable regulations, and governmental support, which if these things are addressed, and especially also if the public are literally sensitized and understanding how these nuclear power plants are going to work, then we would be I would say that we will be in the road to progressing to nuclear power. But currently, I would say that, okay, in regards to Kenya, we're not yet at that point because we need a lot of approvals. We need a lot of funding for such projects to happen. And that's why we are being told about the energy progression. We are being told, don't just do away with the fossil fuel, because even such big power plants like this would require such heavy capital, which could also come from the fossil fuels, and we could put it back into such projects. So that's just my opinion. And I actually did write a paper on project financing of nuclear power plants. So the person who asked it could reach out to me, and I'd be in a position to share it with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jocelyn. I'm sure the attendee is going to reach out. We will share your email addresses. Just because of time, we're not going to will not be able to cover every single question that was sent in, but you can always reach out to us afterwards. So I'll just move on to my final remarks, my closing remarks. So in closing, I would like to thank our distinguished lineup of speakers for the profound presentations and for engaging with the audience through this Q&A session. Also, to sincerely express my gratitude to all the people that in this conference. I hope that you have found this to be very insightful and a very fruitful session. Last but not least, I would like to thank the AEMI team and the organizers of this conference for putting together such an important event and for making it a resounding success in Victoria.
Sorry. Kennedy, you're done?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Dr. Victoria.
Oh, all right, because I thought you would really bring in our team from AEMI, because they've really done a great work. They've done a very great job. So let's just hear from a few of our AEMI team, just a minute, and just share your experience with the organization and what you've benefited from AEMI in terms of mentoring you, being the mentorship organization for you, for your growth and professional growth. I'll start with Jocelyn.
Oh, thank you very much, Dr. Victoria. I didn't know it would be the first one to start, but my experience with AEMI has been one which has given me such a great opportunity, especially in terms of networking with other people, in terms of connecting and sharing a lot of ideas in the energy sector. And I would also say that through AEMI, we also have collaborated on a lot of webinars, conferences, and it has given me a platform, especially in my legal career. I am a lawyer, I'm a young lawyer, but I'm very passionate and very focused in everything that I do. So I would just like to say thank you for everyone who's attended this conference, and a special thank you to even Professor Paul Griffin, just as he said that, and he has given us literally a lot of guidelines into mentorship, and also the other panelists, they've given us such wonderful tips and notions on how to progress in your career. I think that is something which we should take into consideration and have a mentor, people like Dr. Victoria, just as she says that Dr. Carol Nackley is someone who she aspires to be. It's the same thing with me. I aspire and look up to people like Paul Griffin, Dr. Carol, Dr. Victoria. Those are, I would say, my mentors. And even if you don't know that you're my mentor. Now you know you're my mentor. Yes. So yes, so thank you very much. And I think I would like to invite Ahiba to lead. Thank you.
Thank you, Jocelyn. And she's an entrepreneur, very passionate. I think you should follow her campaign that makes candles in Kenya. She does lots of things, and she's also a partner in a law firm. On top of that, she's working with us at AEMI. She's very passionate and very dedicated. Thanks a lot for all your hard work. I do not take it for granted. We'll move on to our author, Zach. He writes a lot about China and other things. I'm sure you'll follow him on social media. Zach, could you please share your experience with us?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the nice words, Dr. Victoria. I'll bounce off of what Jocelyn was ending off with, just to throw on a note and say, I think we were both lectured by Prof. Griffin during our LLMs. We did the same LLM, he did that. Yeah. So we both went through capable hands, and so it's just very nice to rub shoulders here with people who have taught you. And I think we also both bumped into you, Dr. Victoria, at the Extractives Hub, when it was once called that, now the Energy Hub Plus. And so it's just nice coming away, you know, and being able to see the people who are so far ahead of you in different forms and in different positions and over a longer period of time. Regardless, as far as my experience within AEMI, I'll say one of the most valuable things that I think I've managed to get out is access. Access to you, Dr. Victoria, access to Kennedy, access to Jocelyn. You mentioned that I'm a writer and that I like to publish a few things here and there. And so being able to access those minds and being able to have people who are so sharp and so good with the written word, to be able to cast an eye over your work and be able to say, try this, try that. And me and Kennedy have also spoken away from the formal AEMI platforms, and he's been a tremendous help in anything that I've written. And I've managed to assist him here and there as well, where I can. Not that he needs any of my assistance, but I think it's that, access to the space as well. Mentorship conferences like this, the publications of other authors and being a part of that process, and even just being able to say that this is who you represent within the country, which is AEMI. It's such an honor to be able to say that and be able to shake hands with people who operate in similar spaces and talk about future collaborations and so on. Of course, COVID slowed us down quite a bit and we had to stay behind our desktops, but the conversations that being a part of AEMI has allowed me to have just been absolutely wonderful in being associated with that. And so I'll say that one of the things that I cherish most is access to the minds of the people that are here, and being able to always, if I ever needed to, just be able to shoot Dr. Victoria a quick message, or if there's an opportunity, be able to explore that locally and see if it works. With Dr. Victoria, I know we've put together a bid before for a project, and access to those types of opportunities and being able to charge towards challenges with just extremely competent and sharp people. It changes the way you think and the way you operate. And so I'm grateful to just be near every single one of you. So thank you for that.
And we're honored to have you. Very hardworking, dedicated. I keep telling people we don't really have money. So this is just a group for people who are passionate. If you're not passionate about your work, AEMI is not for you, because we move fast and we all have different jobs, but you see people always create time to do these small things. So I really, really appreciate Zach. Thanks a lot for your dedication. And obviously, Kenneth, I know you are running away from doing the closing remarks and everything, but that was actually your duty. So give us your experience and then you will end the conference officially.
Thank you very much, Dr. Victoria. So my experience with, before I go to my experience, I'll briefly by Zach. Thank you for that. I'm originally from Kenya, but I'm based in South Africa. I've been in South Africa for the last 12 years now. In terms of my experience with AEMI, I'll just echo what has been mentioned by Jocelyn and Zach. It has been It's been a pleasure for all these years so far. Just been able to